Irwin Cotler is with me this morning. We know him from so many roles, MP for Mount Royal, federally, Minister of Justice in the government of Paul Martin up until 2015, and longtime human rights expert and activist. He himself has represented political prisoners and Soviet dissidents and has been, in fact, barred from entering Russia. So there are many things to talk to you about, Mr. Cotler. I'm just delighted to have you on the program this morning. Welcome back.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to join you.
Let's just begin with what we were just looking at, those incredible scenes of people fleeing, people who didn't think Russia would ever take the action it has, now trying to get out and get to safety. How should the world respond, do you think, to this humanitarian crisis that appears to be looming?
Well, I think we have to understand that what's happening here is that Putin's aggression is not only an assault on the political independence and territorial integrity of Ukraine, not only an assault on the rules-based international order, as we've called it, but it actually he is seeking to underpin his assault with dangerous, false, and misleading tropes, such as referring to the need to denazify the Ukraine, the need to demilitarize Ukraine, as if it is Putin that is the victim of Ukraine's aggression or Ukraine's Nazism. This is turning, history, fact, and law on its head. And what we're seeing now in these horrific, humanitarian scenes at this point is also, I regret to say, a testament to the fact that for over a decade now, we've had a global political pandemic characterized by a resurgent global authoritarianism, the retreat of democracies, assaults on human rights, and the whole amidst of culture of impunity. And I think this incentivized Putin. He saw that when he partook of the atrocities in Syria, there was no price to pay. When he was exporting incitement to Venezuela, no price to pay. When Xi Jinping was engaged in mass atrocities, as we are speaking in Xinjiang and elsewhere, there was no price to pay. So the resurgent global authoritarians, and I would include even Khamenei's Iran, have been able to operate with impunity for over a decade, while we've seen the backsliding of democracies. And I suspect this helped to incentivize Putin to believe that he could get away with this aggression, frame it as if he is the target, and at the same time use these false flags and tropes.
So that was definitely one of the things I wanted to hear from you specifically. When he, in that address, said that his aims were twofold, demilitarization, but specifically the denazification, that false narrative that he's used for some time, that there is some hotbed of neo-Nazism in the east of Ukraine. When you heard, as Canada's anti-Semitism envoy, of someone who's spoken up so eloquently, so powerfully for so long for the rights of the Jewish people, what was your reaction to hearing that denazification?
Well, to me, this was yet an outrageous attempt to legitimate his criminal aggression. And this really is yet another manifestation, regrettably, of Holocaust distortion and indeed Holocaust inversion now with regard to the Ukraine. The president of Ukraine happens to be a Jew. Part of his family were themselves murdered in the Holocaust. Ukraine is an independent and democratic country. So Putin, as I say, is inverting history, using the Nazi trope to delegitimate the Ukraine, and almost set himself up as if he is the defender against Nazism. And this is, an outrageous libel of the people of Ukraine, the democracy of Ukraine, and effectively really indicts himself.
Mr. Cotler, let me ask you a little bit, in case people aren't familiar with your story. You have a long connection to Russia, having acted on behalf of dissidents like Andrei Sakharov. You've been banned from the country. There were maybe you were going to get into this. I believe you were deliberately poisoned, a la Litvinenko, at an earlier point in 2006, I believe it was, because of your longtime connections there. I'm just wondering, that was a time when Putin was early in his presidency. What do you know of Putin and having dealt with him and his regime that we should be keeping in mind as we watch him make these moves now?
Well, I recall Putin, and my first brush with him was when he was heading up the FSB, the successor to the KGB, and he was responsible for the imprisonment of a leading Russian environmentalist, Vladimir Nikitin. We took that case to the European Court of Human Rights, which acquitted Nikitin, but Putin has a long memory. I was not the only one that was poisoned. Also, the president of the European Court, before whom I appeared, was also poisoned at around the same time as I was. And similarly, with regard to Magnitsky sanctions, Putin has said that this was his major foreign policy objective, to do away with Magnitsky sanctions. And I think the Magnitsky sanctions have further internationalized, and here too, this is part of what's driving him in this regard. And then again, Putin has never gotten over the fact, and he himself has said that the greatest geopolitical catastrophe was the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And within that, he has always seen Ukraine as really being part of that Soviet Union. So there's a whole, not only geopolitical historical configuration here, but it's also Putin's mindset and how he historically views the Soviet Union and Ukraine within it.
I just have one last moment, but that's exactly what I was hoping to get from you, the mindset. I mean, you're acting on behalf of those dissidents and political prisoners of conscience, go back to the 70s, and yet remembering, as you said, that long memory. So help us understand the mindset. What is driving him now, do you think?
Well, I think that, part of it is he never got over the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Part of it is that he's always seen Ukraine as being part of the Soviet Union and belonging there. Part of it is he still, at some point, believes in his own historical mindset, this Nazification theme. All these approaches converge, and then we see this incentivization for his action by the fact that the West, which is now finally acting, wasn't in fact in retreat up to now with regard to all the other resurgent global authoritarians in this global political pandemic of which Putin was at the helm, and he was able to see for the last 10 plus years he could act with impunity. That incentivized his actions now.
Irwin Cotler, always great to hear from you, and especially on this. Thank you for the time today.
Not at all. Good speaking with you.